This is the best of First and Last, the podcast, with Mike Golic Jr. and Robin Lundberg.
And Mike, I know what to say. Mwahahaha. That's what I know what to say.
I sat there right as the comeback really started to mount, when you could see that inevitable. We always talk of the Jason Voorhees in the background. You can hear the breathing. The music starts to play. And all I could think about was, boy, we're going to be dealing with a Robin Lundberg in rare form tomorrow morning.
Look, here's the thing, right? I get hit with this criticism, whatever, that I like LeBron too much, or I'm a LeBron fanboy, as if I'm the one in the wrong. This is what cracks me up about this. Because guess what, people? If you're not basking in this greatness and appreciating it, you're a sucker. All these other people who are saying what they're saying, they are suckers. I've been right this whole time. What is the issue? Like, it drives me insane. I'm sick and tired of it. I'm not putting up with it anymore. We're watching the best basketball player of all time, and y'all have the nerve to go, hey, why are you so into LeBron James? I don't know. Isn't that the whole point? Isn't that like what do we do this for? And you got this guy every year sort of being taken for granted, right? Are the Cavs in trouble now? LeBron, I don't know if he can do it this year. Who's the MVP? We got to give it to somebody else. We got to make sure LeBron's fourth in the MVP this year. Take that.
Come out here and cape for your mans. Get somebody that looks at you the way Robin Lundberg looks at LeBron James' poster above his bed every night. You know what? And you know what? Quite frankly, right now, we all don't have a lot of leg to stand. I shouldn't say we. It's not like I don't enjoy watching this guy play either, but obviously I understand that the level of admiration is just a little bit different here. And like you said, rightly so, I'm selfish. I've said all along, I want this guy to be the best of all time so that way I can say, yeah, I got to watch the best of all time during the prime of my life. And, do you take it a little far at times? Yeah, sure. That's probably something we all need to admit. But today, Robin, I'm not going to stop you. I'm going to bask in the glory with you, and we're going to step up and take all these LeBron haters and mow them down as they come through.
I was making incomprehensible sounds that were being mimicked by my son. Like, that was the kind of performance that it was. Well, on the tomahawk dunk coming through the lane. Or, you know what the best, I think, indicator of a great performance is? Laughter. Like, I'm just, laughing watching it. Because, I've done that with other people, too. But when you see greatness at the peak of its powers.
Yeah, you had clothes on while this is going on, right?
Bottom half. I had clothes in the bottom half.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You took a little long to say that answer, so I started getting a little worried. I knew Raj was in the vicinity. Like, I wanted to make sure you had at least separated yourself when you were in LeBron mode, when you activated 0 dark 30 23 Robin.
Here is what we're talking about, by the way, in case you missed it. LeBron James and the Cavaliers come back from 25 points down at halftime last night. The largest comeback in the history of the NBA playoffs. In addition, LeBron scores or assists on 73 of the Cavaliers' points, the biggest total for him in NBA or in his NBA playoff career. And also, worth noting, the guys that weren't playing. Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love sitting on the bench as spectators watching it. They put some shooters around LeBron, and he did his thing with those guys. And, the difference between the first half and the second half was staggering, because if we were to do the show at halftime, we would be at that Cavs panic meter. They cannot play defense. They're, not a championship-worthy team. And then things changed.
And this wasn't something that I associated with this Cavaliers team either. So if you're looking for where you are on the panic meter or the confidence meter with this team, this is a feather in their cap, because I don't think a lot of us assumed that this Cavaliers team down 26 at half was going to be the one to rally. First game back in Indiana, an easy one to let your guard down. The Pacers are thriving off this home court energy, and instead what you got was a team that showed a lot of fight and really battled back, and it took a lot of different guys down the course of that roster, guys that we knew had had the capabilities to go off, but when you're talking about the lineup that really helped get it done for them, 9 of the 12 minutes in the fourth quarter was LeBron with Deron Williams, Kyle Korver, Channing Frye, and Shumpert. That lineup had played together for just 9 minutes during the regular season and didn't play together all in games 1 or 2. So it was a different group of guys coming together and saying, all right, we needed something to get us home, something to drive this spark, and it ended up being that group.
You know, they had a good rhythm going, so Ty Lue stuck with him. I think part of it was Kyrie and Love were struggling from the field. Another part of it was him probably saying, hey, guys, the defense wasn't good enough tonight. And then just seeing what was going on out on the court, because it can be very difficult to check one LeBron James when the court is spread with 4 shooters. Shumpert, not the best outside shooter, but he hits threes at a decent clip. So 4 shooters out on the floor really spreading it for him, and the Pacers had no answer. We'll make that Straight Talk brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, half the cost. LeBron James and the Cavaliers coming back from 25 down at the half. Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable networks.
For me, just looking at the shot chart, so you mentioned the stat about the percentage of offense that went through LeBron in this game. You look at it chart by quarters, and you can see exactly why the comeback happened the way it did. Slowly but surely, the Cavs ran more and more of their offense. It was Cavaliers shooting by quarter with no touches by LeBron. So they attempted 14 field goals without touches by LeBron in the first quarter, went 6 of 14, went 3 of 9 in the second quarter, and then 1 of 5 in the third quarter and 1 of 1 in the fourth quarter. So there was one shot attempt that did not involve some sort of action from LeBron James in the fourth quarter. Only 6 such attempts in the second half, and it's no wonder why all of a sudden they came storming back to get this win.
Here was LeBron afterwards.
I can't even sit up here and say I can. The one thing that I do know is that we had a huge halftime deficit and we was able to come back and win the game. I didn't know that it was the biggest comeback and things of that nature. And for myself, I don't know, man. I just try to put myself in position to help my teammates win. And no matter who on the floor with me, I try to empower them. I try to make them better. Try to make them believe that we can be great every night, no matter who's on the floor with me. And for myself, I just don't settle for being not as great as I can be, and it's not gonna result in a stat line like this every night, But my mind is where my mind is. When my mind is fresh and when my mind is in the moment, then sometimes certain things like this happen. So I don't know. I can't even really appreciate it. I'll let you guys kind of write your words about it and go from there. But the only thing that matters is a win, and that's what I'm here for.
20 straight first-round playoff game wins. And how about this for the second half, Mike? 28 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists, no turnovers in the second half.
That's been huge for it, and something that's been a little bit of a problem for them in this series. But now you mentioned that 20 straight first-round wins. We had talked about 4 straight years of first-round sweeps, and try as we might to seemingly dethrone the Cavs before it ends, but it looks like we could be well on our way to a 5th.
Do you think he gets taken for granted a little bit? Because it does feel like, we've talked about this on the show. We go through this annual, let's figure out a way to doubt where he's going to wind up at the end of the season, and an annual, who is the guy who's passing him now? I've heard Kawhi Leonard takes as him being the best all-around player. When Durant won the MVP, people were putting him there. Obviously, Steph over the last couple of years. Do you think he gets taken for granted a little bit?
I think he does, and I think a large portion of it is because we've become so ring-centric in the way we look at sports in general, but especially basketball and especially him, knowing who he's chasing. And so anytime we get a little sliver of hope that he might not be able to accomplish that, we see that as blood in the water for all of the rest of those conversations that come up.
First and last, the podcast.
Mike, all those models that we use to project forward, the Cavs have a 2% chance. First of all, they're based on the regular season. And second of all, is there a way to quantify the impact that somebody like LeBron can have, where we have all these great players in the NBA, like all-time greats, and then you have him?
Yeah, it's a completely different level, and we heard from LeBron James before talking about the mentality it took for that team at halftime to just be able to come out in the second half and start chipping away at this league. And that's something, if you're anyone else on that team, if you're any one of LeBron's teammates, becomes increasingly easy when you can look at that guy and say, all right, we've got him. We've got a good place to start, so we always know we're capable of something like this. It's going to take us executing at a clip the way we saw them in the second half, but you know you've got that possibility, and that level of confidence is infectious. Like, that goes on down through the locker room if you are Channing Frye or Iman Shumpert or the rest of these guys that we saw have success, because you know right down at the very core of it, you've got the best guy and the other team doesn't.
Well, it's pretty hilarious if you actually list those guys out. Like, Kyle Korver is a dead-eye shooter. No one can ever make any bones about that. Channing Frye is awesome off the catch and shoot as a big man, a three-point shooter. Darren Williams is past his prime, and Shumpert is a guy who struggled mightily. Imagine, is there any other person you could drop in and you would even think there'd be a chance that those four guys plus one could not only come back from 25, but play defense the way they did in the second. Remember, the Pacers had 74 points at the half.
I was, again, sitting here writing the first half headlines. That's almost something like an exercise we need to do for the Cavaliers at this point, is write halftime headlines, because the halftime headline for them last night was giving up an ungodly amount of points and looking like an absolute revolving door in the first half defensively.
Well, their offense seems to fuel their defense a little bit at times, too. They're not that naturally athletic either, so they have to be in a little bit of a higher gear, and I think they have to be structured also. And one thing that really helps the defense is when you're making shots, because then the other team has to take the ball out of the basket on the baseline. It gives you time to set up rather than the ball coming off the rim and they're going.
Well, it also gives those guys a ton of energy. Like, you saw the response that all of those big shots from those role players got from the Cavaliers bench, from the guys on the court, and so that energy can then get taken and transferred down to the defensive end in a way that I don't think they always do a good job of just bringing inherently on that end. And that's what gets them into trouble like they were in the first half, is the fact that I think they have a difficult time just going out there and prioritizing defense on their own. They need, all right, that rush of energy, that carryover from the side of the floor they clearly like playing on.
Let's go to Bugsy in Indiana. Bugsy, you're up first here on First and Last.
What's going on, fellas?
Yo.
I'm just calling to let you know that LeBron James is the greatest to ever step foot on a court. There's no way you could put anybody in that spot last night and they would have came back and won. You could put Michael Jordan in there. The thing about Michael Jordan is he wouldn't even pass the potatoes at the dinner table.
Well, Michael Jordan did adjust his game, and he's not the kind of passer LeBron is, but he did make some big passes throughout his career. I don't slander Michael Jordan. I don't go out of my way to slander Michael Jordan. If you believe that Michael Jordan's the best player ever, that's a perfectly reasonable opinion, right? I think ultimately for someone around my age, it's going to be Jordan and LeBron 1A and 1B. Personally, I think LeBron affects the game in more ways than any other player I've ever seen, is the best player I've ever seen. What I find to be interesting is how resistant some people seem to be to that, especially when he should be their generation's guy. Like, if Jordan was your guy, I get it. He's always going to be your guy, like LeBron's always going to be my guy. But say somebody 5 years younger than me who really missed most of Jordan's prime is still resistant to LeBron being the guy, I find very strange. And I also had a lot of backlash last night about, somebody just tweeted me, Ahmad Yusuf just tweets in, man, your standards have fallen. You're getting excited over a win over a 42-40 number 7 seed, as if LeBron hasn't been there and done that. This isn't, him on the march for his first championship and me doing this. He beat the 73-win Warriors last year.
But that's a people applying the LeBron standard. If it was any other player in this year's playoffs that had gone out and had the game that LeBron had last night, no one would have, and everyone would be, why wouldn't you lead with that? Why wouldn't that be the overwhelming story of the day? I think a lot of it still is going to come back to personality. I think a lot of people see the way LeBron conducts himself, whether it's the stuff in the media like we saw in January when they went on, had that bad month there and LeBron came out and was critical of the organization, sometimes the way he is on the floor. A lot of people I think just have a problem with his general demeanor and attitude because it's not what they claim they want. If you were to take Russell Westbrook's mentality and put it in LeBron James's body, I think that's what everyone wants out of it, but you don't get the same player when you do that, and no one seems to understand that.
Yeah, and, I get some of it, like those comments can rub people the wrong way, but overall, he seems like a likable guy, right? And like Michael Jordan, for instance, maybe, he didn't play in this modern 24/7 news cycle social media era, but I mean, this is a person who has stories of punching teammates and, trying to win money from them.
But some people romanticize that stuff. Like that's the remnants of the era that they enjoy when guys would challenge each other like that, and there wasn't all this buddy stuff. But it's all selective. We use that in moments that we want to diminish someone when we feel like it, and so it's that's why I always have a problem with it, because it's applied selectively, and then other times we lament it when those situations pop up. And 9 out of 10 times, it is brought up purely for LeBron.
Let's go to Tony, the Donut Man in Wichita, Kansas. Go ahead, Tony.
Hey, fellas, what's going on, man? I've been trying to get through since yesterday. But
wow.
That talk yesterday, Robin, about Russell Westbrook, you drove me nuts, man. First of all, if he would have passed all those deadbeat teammates and lost the game, the only thing you'd have been saying is, my God, he's had 40-some triple-doubles this year, and he can't take the shot.
Have you ever heard me say anything like that?
Yesterday, you said he went over the edge of doing good and being a ball hog.
Yes.
Well, who else was scoring?
Well, he didn't pass. I mean, you can't score if you don't touch the ball. How's that even possible?
Well, you know what? They wouldn't even be in the playoffs if it wasn't for him. And everybody knows that any other team lost Kevin Durant, and then you get stuck with Russell. What he's done is better than any player in the NBA lately has done. He put it on his shoulders and said, I'll take you there.
I don't think I was overly critical of Russell Westbrook yesterday at all.
Oh, my God. Listen to the feedback.
I didn't. No, I thought in the second half of that fourth quarter he went nuts. That one game, I didn't say he should be shot into the sun.
They wouldn't even have been there if he wouldn't have been going nuts all game like he did every game all season.
I said he was marvelous for 3.5 quarters.
But he didn't go out there and try to miss them.
I didn't say he went out there and tried to miss him. What I said is he took terrible shots and didn't pass to his teammates.
I love you. I love the show. I love Mike. I listen to it every day. I got one more thing. ESPN, are they going broke or something? Because here in Kansas, they went from 98.7 FM to 97.5, and I'm guessing if you leave the building at 97.5, you ain't getting no reception.
I can't claim to know a lot about Kansas radio, but that being said, Tony, it's always a pleasure hearing from you. You are my hero, the donut man, our friend in my favorite industry.
Yeah, that's not my area of expertise either.
First and last.
I had a very stunned reaction also. Before I flipped to the game even, well, it was almost pointless to flip to the game, just seeing the score of the Bucks-Raptors game last night.
Seeing them get blown out?
Yeah, not that the Bucks won the game. I mean, Milwaukee is a tough out for anybody with the length that they have. I have a lot of respect for Jason Kidd. He's a basketball genius as well. Look, he was on a team for the Knicks that won 54 games, right, on the Knicks.
Yeah. He made that should, if nothing else, that should define a career. Jason Kidd, he made the Knicks good.
He played a large part in the only legitimate failure, I think, of LeBron's career in the 2011 finals. Obviously, he took the Nets to the finals a couple of years. He took the Nets to the playoffs as a coach when they were old and it wasn't really working out. And he flipped the way they played midseason, putting Paul Pierce to the stretch 4 position. Guy's a basketball genius. So I have a lot of respect for him, Giannis's talent. We've been over that. And the Bucks is a tough matchup for anybody due to that length. However, the level of that blowout is stunning, considering the Raptors are very talented. They have a very talented roster, and there's no excuse for them to score 30 points and a half, as they did last night. There's also really no excuse for the continued dud of performances that you're getting from Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan. I've given those guys the benefit of the doubt, thinking that eventually things will even out, but maybe it's just true about them not being playoff performers, because that is going to have to turn around at some point, or that will be the label that sticks with them forever. This series has gone a way where it's looking like, it's like not quite to the level of Boston and Chicago, obviously, but you have to almost favor Milwaukee. Game 2 was tight. If I'm Dwayne Casey, I'm changing the lineup in Game 4 to get some more spacing out on the court. I'm probably starting Serge Ibaka at center and bringing Jonas Valanciunas off the bench.
At this point, I mean, the Toronto Raptors were the team that you said probably had the best chance of anyone, had the best roster capable of beating the Cavaliers in the playoffs. Do you think they get out of the series? Because I'm very comfortable saying Bucks in 6 at this point. I've flirted with the idea that Toronto may not even win another game in this series, especially seeing what we saw last night at home for the Bucks and understanding that they're a young team who's really gaining confidence as this series goes along.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's tough to pick against them given the information that we have at this point, which would be pretty remarkable. All the talk about the Cavaliers and the panic, right? And then the 1 seed and the 3 seed could both go out in the first round, leaving really Washington as the only. I guess Chicago people will take as an emerging contender. I don't buy Chicago against the real teams when some of their flaws could be exposed as well. So, yeah, LeBron and the Cavs.
working out really well. It's a shame. One of these days something will break right for LeBron James.
The Wizards can score, but they don't play much defense either. Giannis and the Bucks are our Lowe's Never Stop Improving Moment of the Week, brought to you by Lowe's. Right now, during Lowe's Ready to Restock event, pro customers could save on the supplies you need most from the brands you trust to help get the job done on time and on budget. Visit Lowe'sForPros.com for details. Well, let's talk about Milwaukee real quick for a second, actually, because what about them as the next emerging power in the East? I talked about their head coach. Obviously, Giannis is one of the emerging stars in the league, if not the kind of emerging young star.
Oh, especially right now coming off this playoffs. I don't know if there's anyone whose stock is going to be higher from the lesser-known commodities than him.
If they can add a little bit more shooting and one more probably playmaker, they're legit at that point. I mean, they're already tough. I think if they can do that, then they're legit, and that could be the, sort of, hey, here we are, team of the Eastern Conference going forward.
Plus, you've got Delly on the team, so you've already got the prerequisite grit and the former champion on the roster to shepherd you through all this. And, I mean, all jokes aside, Delly was a player that we talked about as a valuable commodity in the Cavaliers team. Yeah,
they miss him. He's a good perimeter defender, and, he knows how to run a pick and roll. Basic things like that, can hit an outside shot. He doesn't fit the bill as far as how you usually cast an NBA player, but, he got 28 minutes a tick last night, 10 points on 4 or 5 shooting, helped them out.
Yeah, he did, and you're right. The interesting point for them becomes now with Giannis, because we talked about the time period you get with these young stars as homegrown talents before you have to start worrying about them getting poached, is what does Milwaukee do to indicate to Giannis that, all right, we're very serious about making you the fixture here, not only doing that, in the way they've done already, where clearly he is the center point of their franchise, but saying, all right, we're going to give you what you need to succeed. We're going to give you what you need to be a contender, because you've got a long timeline with this kid to make it work if you want to, but you've got to show enough to say early, all right, when LeBron starts to hit that downslide, because that's what everyone's playing for, you're going to be ready, and we're going to put you in position to capitalize.
He's 22 years old. It was Jason Kidd on the Bucks going into Game 4.
It's just one game. It's over. Come Game 4, we don't start with a 30-point lead, and understand we're going to have to work extremely hard come Saturday. But for us, we can learn and look at our mistakes. But the big thing is we have to understand it's going to be much harder come Game 4.
So the Bucks lead that series 2-1. The Grizzlies now trail the Spurs just 2-1 in their series. They win the first game in Memphis last night, 105-94. Mike, I don't really have any doubt that the Spurs are going to go on and win that series, but it's sort of like the Bulls to me, where when they get to a team that can go at some of their flaws or expose some of their flaws, like the Bulls lack outside shooting, the Spurs are not playing a team that can spread them out here. I have been over and over and over on their guard play, and you look at last night, Tony Parker, 0 points. Parker and Ginobili are legends. I would never disparage those guys, but they're past their prime. And Parker in 19 minutes last night, no points. Danny Green, 6 points. So 6 points from the Spurs starting backcourt last night.
And the guy who sets the tone for your team, and Kawhi Leonard, I think Pop pulled him about a minute and a half into the game because he didn't like the energy that he was bringing to start that game. So something was off with that group. Whatever it was, they didn't bring it. When it starts with your best player, we clearly see Pop not afraid to set a tone and make a clear example that this isn't acceptable, especially when it's coming from the guy that we know is the future of our franchise, is the president of our franchise, and has been there before. That's unacceptable to him, and he made that very clear.
Yeah, and I think the Spurs are going to have real trouble with a team that can spread them out and get up and down the floor. And I guess that would be Houston in the next round. They're going to take him out.
Yeah, that's good because, I mean, right now Memphis is basically a lesser version of the way the Spurs are constructed. They make their hay inside with Marc Gasol and Zach Randolph. By the way, shout out to Zebo, 16 years in and balling the way he did last night. All of them going out there and showing really well for Fizdale after the rant he went on after that game. That was cool to see. And they all got together and paid his fine and then went out there and backed up their coach. He went out there and put himself out on the line in a big, big way. And all of these guys came out to a man and said, all right, we're back on our home court. We're not getting swept. We've got too much pride for that. I mean, Vince Carter was dunking again last night. Did you see that dunk?
Yes.
So I saw that dunk. I reacted like everyone else did, like oohing and eyeing. And then you see it replayed enough times and you go, man, this is how far the mighty have fallen.
You know what, though? Vince Carter, role player, has been amazing. What a nice back-end stretch of his career.
No, and I've heard people say he wants to play a couple more years still, and that's not to diminish that at all, but just understanding because it's like anything else. There's a lot of people that think Ice Cube is just the guy from Ride Along at this point, and there's a lot of kids that are only going to know Grizzlies Vince Carter coming up and see that dunk last night and not understand why we're all so excited, forgetting that he dunked over a 7-foot-tall human being and is probably one of the most accomplished dunkers in league history. And then, of course, Zach Randolph, who I said last night is if you took all the skill and ability from every rec league weekend basketball player on earth and made that one person, it would be Zach Randolph.
Well, Zach Randolph could never jump. Vince Carter was the best dunker in the history of dunkers, in my opinion, at one point. First and last, presented by Progressive Insurance. Callers on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You mentioned David Fizdale and the officiating. Here was what he had to say about it last night.
Certainly wouldn't expect you to complain after a win, but for much of the game, there was still a disparity in foul calls going the other way.
I ain't going down that road, man. Yeah. Oh, man, that already, I'm begging for my players to pay fines for me and stuff. I don't think that's a good look if I keep going down that road. I was just really happy with the way we competed.
So the Grizzlies get to within 2-1 in the series last night.
First and last.
I don't want to be a buzzkill because if people genuinely like something, I don't want to be the guy that's going like, why do you guys like that? The poo-pooer. But it is sort of amusing to me when the NFL schedule is released, like the excitement that comes around it, simply because you know who you're playing in your division. You know who you're playing, cross-match division-wise, and the games are 5 months away. So, the level of, I cannot wait to see who's on the schedule to me is always a bit strange on an annual basis.
Well, you say it like that. You say the games are 5 months away. Everyone else who's excited about these schedules, including myself to an extent, is saying, oh, my God, football season's only 5 months away. And you understand, all right, we've got the draft coming up next weekend. The off-season program's really kicking a gear after that. And then before we know it, training camps in July are going to be here just like that. And then we're off and running. So for a lot of people, these start to be the markers in the off-season where the combine's a big deal and you get the Senior Bowl and a lot of the postseason activities for football that really start to let us know, all right, we can smell it again. It's almost here.
We were talking before the show about the opening game, the Chiefs and the Patriots, and producer Guy Danzy had said it was a meh game. So I was trying to be cute and figure out if there was a way to this larger conversation on, does the NFL lack those headline games, as we'd had that discussion last year with the lack of quarterbacks. And I asked, what would be a better game, because the Chiefs are a good team. And then he totally refuted my point and was correct. Because, you could have this Super Bowl rematch with Atlanta. You could have Oakland, I think would be more interesting. Obviously, Cam Newton still has star power. Could be that. There are a lot of choices there for that opening game. Is it the Chiefs? I mean, is that what, leaves people a little flat? And there's a little bit of Patriots fatigue, I think, at this point, too.
Yeah, well, I don't think the issue will be on the New England side. You'll have them unveiling another banner. Roger Goodell has said he's going to be at that game, so you'll have that whole storyline going on with them. It's even less so the Chiefs and more so just Alex Smith. Alex Smith is everything that people dislike about that team, and it's understandable because his game's not overly exciting. That's why when I heard you hear a lot of things leading up to the draft about who teams are interested in and who they've brought in to work out. But Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback out of Texas Tech, being someone that's caught the eye of the Kansas City Chiefs, blew my mind because he is the anti-Alex Smith. He is the anti-Andy Reid. That kid is huck it, chuck it all day down the field, and he just completely goes against what we normally associate with Kansas City.
Well, Andy Reid, I mean, remember, he is the guy, when Vic came back, right? I mean, well, Chip Kelly obviously had a hand in that later, but when originally that happened, Andy Reid has played with a lot of different guys. He had McNabb. He's had a lot of success. He's got to be one of the more underrated coaches there is, because people just want to pick at that one flaw, like the clock management deal, which may be a deal, but one of my favorite expressions is perfect is the enemy of good. Andy Reid is a darn good coach, right? I mean, how many Philadelphia sports fans would trade what they've had the last few years to go back to the NFC Championship game every year?
Oh, yeah. Philly absolutely didn't realize how good they had it until it's gone. And really, Andy Reid has, I think, not, been downgraded by the fact that the Kansas City Red makes him look like the Kool-Aid man, and that's never good for association when you want to be taken seriously. But listen, yeah, so the Chiefs are going to detract from that. But overall, in week 1 especially of the schedule, because you mentioned we wanted the Super Bowl matchup, I think week 6 or 7, the Patriots do play the Atlanta Falcons, so we get that rematch. But you look at the rest of the matchups for week 1, I think one of the people will be particularly excited about Seattle at Green Bay. So you have at Lambeau, two teams that most people assume are contenders going forward there. The Giants at the Cowboys.
That one does it every time.
That's the Sunday night game for week 1. So that'll be a great marquee matchup for them there. And then there's a couple that I think are going to fly a little under the radar that really get me excited. You've got the New York you got the Jets at Buffalo, but for me, Oakland at Tennessee, because the Raiders were the team last year that was on the rise. They looked like Derek Carr was going to be a legitimate MVP candidate. That was going to be a team that we thought in the AFC might be able to challenge the Patriots, and then their quarterback gets injured, and that all comes undone, versus the Tennessee Titans and another upstart, young, future face of the league quarterback in Marcus Mariota that I think has the potential to be a very good football team in a division that's sort of starved for someone to take the reins.
Now, there was another game I think that you had circled also that you don't think most people would circle. You might be the only person to circle it.
The super under the radar game for me is Tampa Bay at Miami, because Tampa Bay, I'm all in on the Jameis Winston bandwagon. I think that he is primed for a big year. Now, I predicted that last year, and he was a bit up and down when you looked at him and Mariota.
I think Mariota's better. I'm on Team Mariota.
Oh yeah, and we had that debate last year, and we will again this year. And Mariota, the trajectory for him, it was a much more even rise last year, where Jameis Winston was kind of like the NBA predictive analytics charts that we see, where it goes up and down like some sort of earthquake graph. But I'm predicting a bigger season from them this year. Just a guy with all the tools. They've got a lot of offensive weapons there. I think their offensive line, as that's become more and more in vogue, has really been solidified and is going to give them a better chance to limit some of those turnovers. But then on the other side, Miami, so much of that interest for me lies in Adam Gase, their head coach. One of the best young head coaches in the game right now. Had them rolling for a stretch last year before Ryan Tannehill ended up getting hurt and derailing that big 6-game win streak they had during the season. They've got Jay Ajayi, the young running back that they're really into. That's another group that's built an impressive offensive line. And then you've got Ndamukong Suh in that defense that's only going to get better as they continue to add competent pieces.
Miami's one of those teams, though, like, I feel like there's a grouping of them. Like every year, people are like, oh, well, maybe this is the year. Now they were 10-6 last year, I think. So maybe they do finally pop at this point. Where are you on Tannehill? Because he seems to be a bit polarizing.
Tannehill is a bit polarizing. Listen, I don't think skill set wise, this is a guy that I think is still learning a lot of what it takes to be a great quarterback. He was a wide receiver for a majority of his college career, so it wasn't like he's even a lifer at the position, but that's also a place that Adam Gase is uniquely adept at. I mean, we saw the work certainly that he did out in Denver before, but then with Jay Cutler in Chicago, that sort of really lit everyone up and saying, all right, you were able to corral the gunslinger that was Jay Cutler, the turnover prone machine that he was, and bring him in. So I think in Miami, with Adam Gase at the helm there, that's going to be a guy that's going to be able to max out whatever Ryan Tannehill's got, and we'll see the ceiling for him very soon.
First and last on ESPN Radio.
we've tried to be friendly with Hockey Guy. We've tried to make a truce, and here, again, is our gesture of kindness.
This one's for you, Hockey Guy.
Here they are. Winners of the first round in the Eastern Conference Playoff Series, the Pittsburgh Penguins, as they have defeated the Columbus Blue Jackets by the score of 5-2 and win the series 4-1. Blackhawks Kruger sends it down ice. Rene stops it, and the countdown ensues. It's handshake time in Nashville. The Predators have swept the Chicago Blackhawks. 4-1 the final.
Kreider regains into the Montreal zone, down the left wing with a shot in front, score! Rangers win! Mika Zibanejad with the overtime goal, and the Rangers win Game 5, lead the series 3-2. Zibanejad set up by Kreider. Mika Zibanejad is the Ranger hero.
Now dishing back for David Desharnais. He'll swing it to the corner for Draisaitl. Back in front, Desharnais.
I'm thinking that was 630 CHED, the Ched. Meanwhile, we also had 105.9 The X, 102.5 The Game, and ESPN New York 98.7.
An absolute overflow of emotion. That's why Hockey Guy couldn't wait to get going, because he knew he had that in the can.
First and last.
Mike Golic Jr.'s Twitter account, his 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed, alerted me to a story yesterday, and that had to do with the unfolding, post-mortem stuff, I guess, with Aaron Hernandez, with the suicide. It's been officially ruled a suicide.
Yes.
From the other day, where they apparently also found some handwritten notes in his cell as well. But the maybe longest lasting story after all this could be what happens with his brain following his death. And the family of Aaron Hernandez is donating his brain to CTE research at Boston University, that famed CTE unit. And your tweet and your thoughts on that definitely caught my attention yesterday.
Yeah, so I said I'm a fan. I understand that with research like this, the more samples that you have, the better. That's just sort of the basics of the situation. The more they can look at these things, the more that we can come to find out. But I'm not a fan of what I already saw happen a little bit, and what I know will be the headline going forward, which is if and when they do, find CTE in his brain, that's immediately, that headline is going to be associated with all of the ills that befall Aaron Hernandez in his life, and is going to be associated by many with those ideas in a way that I'm really uncomfortable with.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I understand that. Look, good research and good science doesn't have a goal, right? You are studying and you go where it takes you. So you hope that is the case here. As far as CTE goes, I do think it's important that we learn as much as we can about it for future players, future generations, and the like. The question, I guess, would be also, I don't know enough about the research. How much of the degree of CTE can they diagnose as well? Because, first of all, we have to find out if he had it. He might not have had it at all. But if he did have it, the degrees, how good have they gotten at diagnosing that? Because I know it's something you have to wait until afterwards to even get the information after somebody's dead.
Well, yeah, that's the one problem, is you can only do this post-mortem at this point. They haven't figured out a way to test for it early on. I'm not sure about the levels there as well. But, I mean, really, for me, what it comes down to, because you're right, yes, the science should absolutely go, and that's why I've had a problem on the other end of this when it's appeared that the NFL has tried to direct the research in certain ways that they've been guilty of at times. But I'm not worried about the scientists and where they take this. I'm worried about where everyone else on the outside takes it, which is when we get a bunch of half-baked results, which is right now where we're at. Like, we don't have an end game, and really, as long as we can't diagnose this while people are still alive, we're basically operating on the samples of people that have usually met a demise that is something less than the normal expiration date. So you already go into it with that predisposed set of circumstances, and it's at the very top end of all these things. So there's so much that we don't know on down the line, how it affects just college players, just high school players, the rest of the general population. Like, if someone like me goes through life just fine, there's a good chance that there could still be CTE in my brain that just didn't do anything. We don't know how it reacts with someone's general genetic makeup, all of these different factors. And so taking that and applying it to this argument, people are going to see CTE and they're going to see the way Aaron Hernandez's life played out, and they're going to make a lot of really rash conclusions about that are uncomfortable and that are dismissive of all of the other factors that exist in Aaron Hernandez's life that brought him and only him to that place, and not a host of other people that didn't make it a sweeping trend. But that headline sticks out, and all of a sudden those are the kind of things that, for me, I'm not a war on football guy. That's not who I am, and as long as we've done this show and had these conversations, that's never been me.
You're from a football family.
Yes.
So that is context. Of course, football holds a near and dear place to your heart. It would be absurd if it didn't.
Yes, no, I care about football, but I'm not one who's going to say, oh, everyone's out to get football. Sure. We've got to stand up here and defend the wall that is football from these outside forces and try and discount any sort of science that makes progress into something that could be seen as contrary to that. But at the same time, I also don't like seeing it when I believe that it's not totally founded, when we're taking ideas that aren't fully formed yet and research that hasn't gotten to its full conclusion and acting like we know things with a veritable degree of certainty that affects the way the game is played for kids and people down the line, because that's who we think of in this conversation that may never actually be affected.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, you're talking about confirmation bias, really, right? Or even drawing conclusions before we even have the data in front of us. Aaron Hernandez's own life was not the only one that he took, right? And
yes.
Some of what he did seemed very calculated as well. So I don't want to chalk that up. That doesn't jive with the hypothesis of what CTE would in fact do to you, because it has led to very erratic behavior, uncontrolled thoughts and emotions that players have had, and of course, guys taking their own life in the past. With that said, if he does or did in fact have it, that would be it will become the most preeminent example, I think, because of, as you mentioned, the things that he did and the way his life unfolded.
And that's what I have a problem with. I don't have a problem at all with saying it could be a factor in the things that happened, but when it becomes, like you said, the preeminent example of association of CTE and what this guy did, that I have a problem with, because, God, I mean, how dangerous is that as something introduced into the environment for parents, for kids playing football? I mean, all of that just really, really irks me in a way.
I'm not going to draw any conclusions about the conclusions, right? I'm going to wait until I see what comes back on this information to even have an opinion. I do think it is important. I do think it is good that his brain is being studied. I think that is good. Where that leads, though, I'll see. I'll see what the researchers come back, what they say, what their conclusions are, and then I'll go from there, because as of right now, he may not even have it. Right? Yeah. I don't see anything from Aaron Hernandez's track record that screams the symptoms that I've seen from some of the other guys, but we will see.
But I guess also my point is he could very well have it. I could very well have it, and that doesn't mean the symptoms manifest in the ways that we've seen in other places. That's the one thing I always want to make sure we know, is that yes, we understand that in certain people it has led to certain things, but we don't know that to be true all the time yet. And making that jump, this isn't the NBA where we know, all right, the research has clearly shown us that on the second night of back-to-backs on the road, you are this much more prone to injury than anything else. We don't have something that definite like that yet, so we need to stop treating it that way.
Yeah, well, we don't have the depth of the information and the research, and unfortunately, I think most of the case studies are starting to happen right now. The people who played the bulk of their career and are now getting to the age where these symptoms are manifesting themselves are starting to hit that right now. So it's going to be that group of players who sadly lead to probably the best data and information we wind up getting for the future.
The next generation absolutely is unfortunately going to benefit from what this generation had to go through.
First and Last, the podcast.
Joining us now on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, we have Booger McFarland to go over all the stories in the NFL, including the NFL draft coming up in, just a little less than a week, right?
Just under a week from yesterday.
Is there a new number one pick, Booger? Because apparently DeShone Kizer is a combination of Tom Brady and Cam Newton. That would make him the number one pick, right?
Yeah, if that were true, that would make him the number one pick. Someone should tell DeShone Kizer, listen, to be humble, to sit back and relax, because if you were that good, you probably wouldn't have been benched your senior or your junior year. So he's going to get picked. I think it's probably going to be in round 2. I think when you listen to the quarterbacks that are going to go in 1, you're probably going to get Trubisky, Deshaun Watson, and then the late riser has been Pat Mahomes. And I think you're going to get those 3 in some order. Not sure which order yet, but I think those are the 3 you're going to get in the first round.
Yeah, you've really seen Pat Mahomes and DeShone Kizer sort of wave to each other going on opposite ends of the spectrum through this draft process. And Booger, another guy who may not fall, but relative to what we had all seen from him in his college body of work at Alabama, Reuben Foster, a kind of tumultuous trek through the postseason run here for him. Now it comes out that he had the diluted sample at the Combine, and he's got a pretty elaborate story about why that sample was diluted. Are you buying it, or is this a guy that we're going to see in the program from now on for good reason?
Well, I don't know him that well at all. I mean, I've talked to him, interviewed him, but to say that I buy it, I can't really give an opinion either way. Here's what I'll say. It's definitely a bad look. I think there was a chance he could go in the top 10. But to say he's going to fall out of the first round, I don't think that's going to happen. I think he still goes between 10 and 20. He's that good of a player, Junior. I think he's the best linebacker that Nick Saban has ever had anywhere. And that's saying something. He's got great football character. When you watch the tape, he stands out on the tape. And I think some NFL team that needs a middle linebacker is not going to be able to pass on him, especially when you get between 10 and 20. So I don't think this is going to hurt him that bad. It'll cost him, 5, 6, 8 slots, which will cost him, $5, $6, $8 million probably. But in the end, if he's as good as advertised, he'll make that up on the back end.
First and last, Robin Lundberg, Mike Golic Jr. talking to Booger McFarland here on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Now, Booger, speaking of the guys currently in the NFL, there's a lot of hubbub whenever the schedule gets released. It always cracks me up a little bit because you know your division teams, you know you're playing cross-division and all that sort of stuff. For players, is that something they're looking forward to, or is that something they see when they get around to it?
Well, I think you look at it when you get around to it. And there are only 2 things I look for. That's 1, who you open up with, and then 2, how many cold weather games you have. Those are the only 2 things I looked at because we knew that we were going to play Green Bay at some point. I want to play Green Bay between September and mid-October. I do not want to get Green Bay in December. And lo and behold, usually we always got Green Bay in December. So I don't really care about the schedule so much. But players usually care about the first game and how many cold weather games they have. Because I don't care if you grew up in Philadelphia, if you grew up in Canada. Cold is cold, and everybody gets cold, and players do not like being cold.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, Booger, because so many people assume that when you grow up in a cold weather environment, you get used to it. There ain't no getting used to that. Cold is always cold, no matter where you are.
Without a doubt.
And it hurts,
like
right? Doesn't it hurt more?
Yeah, offensive linemen love to be cold. No, offensive linemen are just crazy. That's what that is.
Yeah, no, there certainly is some of that. So, and speaking of the schedule in itself, Booger, I've seen the Week 1 schedule that's come out now. We talked about some of the matchups before. Some people lamenting that Kansas City at New England is the opening game for the NFL season. Is there any other game that jumped out when you first saw the schedule?
No, not really. I think you look at Kansas City. And what they're supposed to be, to me, I look down here in Tampa with the young Buccaneers going on the road to take on the Dolphins. And I think the fact that the Bucs, coming off everything that they've done this offseason, Jameis Winston, they may add Adrian Peterson, they may draft a running back. I think it's going to be really, really important for them to open with a win and get off to a hot start because they need to make the playoffs this year. This will be Jameis Winston's 3rd year. They added Deshaun Jackson, everything that's going on in the organization. So I think people in Tampa expect big things from the Bucs. I think we expect big things from the Patriots offense. So I'm intrigued to see what an offense is going to look like with Brady, Gronk, Brandon Cooks, Edelman, Amendola. I mean, I can keep going on and on. They got a lot of guys between 5'8" and 6 foot that can cut on the dime and give you 9 cents change. So I can't wait to watch the Patriots offense opening night.
It really is going to be impressive. Sticking with Tampa for a minute, just because I know you are so dialed in with them. Jameis Winston's a guy I really think could be primed for a great season. Based on what you've seen and watching him as much as you had, what do you think the biggest thing he needs to improve on from last year to this year would be?
Well, he's a gunslinger, man. He's obviously your prototypical drop-back passer. He's got to be able to become just a little bit more accurate and a little bit more patient. You know, being a gunslinger, as Brett Favre would always tell you, it pays dividends. However, Brett Favre threw a ton of picks in his career, and I think Jameis has got to minimize the turnovers. If he can do that and still take some of those shots down the field to his new weapon, Deshaun Jackson, get Cameron Brate involved over the middle, and I think the offensive line is also going to be better, so he'll have more time. But two things he's got to do, which is be more patient and not turn the ball over.
Now, one thing that stood out about the schedule, Booger, the Giants play 4 teams coming off a bye week, the most in the NFL. That leads to them having 22 fewer rest days than their opponents. Is this the NFL punishing Eli for the helmet stuff? What's the deal there?
I don't think. No, I think you're reaching, Robin. I think maybe you had a long night and you're trying to find the story there. Listen, there is no story right there because once you get on the field, guess what? Those guys coming off a bye, whether they get the rest or not, once that ball is kicked off in the air, it's not going to matter. It's going to be which team plays the best. Sometimes the schedule just works out a certain way. There are like 3 or 4 teams that open up with 2 straight road games, and people say that's unfair. The schedule is what it is, and at the end of the day, you got to line up and play the team that's on your schedule. I don't think Eli did anything, by the way, or at least if he did, he really sold it the other day in his statement. I think we were waiting on Eli to say something, and he basically said, listen, whatever it is that I was supposed to have done, I didn't do, and when everything is laid on the table, I'll be cleared. You know what? He took a page from his older brother, Peyton Manning, and, you know, when Peyton Manning's name was associated with HGH, he came out and made a statement, and we never heard anything else about it. I think Eli is doing the same. His reputation is too pristine to allow a jersey to damage it. So I think Eli will be fine, man. Eli's a smart dude. He's made $206 million. He can go buy a bunch of jerseys and sleep in them and give them away if he needs to.
Booger, appreciate the time this morning, man. Thank you.
Anytime. Take care, Gojo. He seems to be a little slow this morning. Pick him up a little bit.
We'll get him up to speed, Booger. Appreciate it, man.
Right. First, I think he was talking about you. He was talking about me.
Oh no, he was talking about you and your hot Eli Manning take.
Yeah, no, that wasn't a real legitimate take.
Thank you for listening to the First and Last podcast. You can listen and subscribe to all ESPN podcasts in the Listen tab of the ESPN app. First and Last.